Hi everyone, we should be live now. My name is Gary Feldman.
Hi, I'm Ronnie Kaplan.
And we're here to present you Excel 2010 Tips and Tricks. This is a free solution program that we offer for our clients and prospective clients to show off Ronnie's skills and to provide value to people who want to learn Excel. Right now what I want to make sure is if everyone can hear us, on the bottom left-hand side you'll see a chat section. If you could just type in saying I can hear you, I could see you, and we can start moving along. And I can see and hear you. Perfect. Okay.
I'd like to just say that my company is Computer Training Solutions, and I work with individuals as well as corporate groups to make people more productive, more efficient using the Microsoft Office products. So I'd be happy to help any of you further, and you can contact me with the information on the screen.
And my name is Gary Feldman, President of U.S. Computer Connection, and we are your friendly outsourced IT department. So we are here to get started. We encourage you to ask questions. You could just type in the chat, and we'll stick around to answer all your questions. So why don't we get started, Ronnie?
Okay.
We're going to turn off the video so you don't have to watch us.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to talk about Excel.
And we're just going to get the screen shared.
Okay. So I've got a file, an Excel file that you should all be seeing on your screen, and you should be able to see what I am doing. And I'm going to illustrate a bunch of different shortcuts, tips, features that I think are very helpful. We're using Excel 2010, which is of course the newest version, but most of what I'm going to show you are available on the older versions as well, although the commands to access the features might be in slightly different places. So first of all, I have a file that has quite a few different sheets within it. And as you probably all know, that you can use the little arrows down on the lower left, the navigation arrows, to move from sheet to sheet. But one of the little tricks I like to use is if you point to those navigation arrows and right-click your mouse, you will see a whole list of all of the sheet names, and then all you need to do is click on the one you want to get to. So I think that's a little bit easier in my mind than scrolling back and forth if you have 20 or 25 sheets to look at. So that's one of the shortcuts I like to show people. Another one is that here we have a file that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different city names on it. And it also has a consolidation, because I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later. And those sheets are all laid out the exact same way in terms of having the same January, February, March in total, and in terms of having the same products, different printer products listed. And if I wanted to do something on any of those sheets, like put a label on, put a date on, format the labels in some way, make the titles bigger, and so forth, I wouldn't want to have to do that to one sheet at a time. And one of the easy ways you can do multiple features at once, or apply the features to multiple sheets at once, is to use the Shift key to select the different sheets you'd like to activate. So I have the first sheet, which happens to be New York, selected. If I hold my Shift key and then go to Consolidate and click my mouse, I now have all of those sheets selected. You can see they're highlighted, they kind of look white, and at the top of the screen in the title you can see it says Group. So I now have grouped these sheets. Whatever I do to one of them will now happen to all of them. So if I click into A1 and I put My Wonderful Company as the name here, that's going to be listed on all of the sheets. If I decide that the name of the city for the sheet should be in a different color, I'll just make it red because it's easy to see, and it should be larger, I'm now doing that to all. So if I go to Philadelphia, you see what's happened. I still have My Wonderful Company, which I probably should make bolder and bigger, and even maybe I want to do a center, a merge and center. And that's going to do that for all of them. If I take the headings above the columns and I bold those and I center those, it's going to happen to all of them. If I take the labels along the first column and I say I want to right align them to get them closer to the data and so forth, and then as I look at the other sheets, you can see that they're all, the same thing is happening to all of them. So that's one of the advantages. Obviously, you don't want to enter data when you have them grouped because the data is not going to be the same on all of them, but it's very helpful with formatting. Not only formatting what the sheet looks like, but also one of the things we typically will do is print. And you know that setting up a file for print is sometimes a little time-consuming, not very difficult, but time-consuming. And if I had 10 or 12 sheets that were laid out the same way, I would not want to have to repeat all of those features. So I'm going to ungroup for a moment, which means I'm going to right-click and say ungroup on just one of the sheets. So now they're not grouped anymore. They're not highlighted, and you don't have the group label up at the top. And if I simply go and look at how this would print right now by previewing it, it doesn't have any special setups. So it's just going to print portrait with the standard margins and no particular headers or footers or anything. So I haven't done anything to that. So let's just say that I would like to print this in landscape. And I would like to put headers and footers and different margins. So I'm going to group them again. I'm going to hold my shift and click on the consolidate sheet. And then I'm going to go into my page layout tab. And I'm going to change the orientation to landscape. And I'm going to set the margins as wide, just to change the margins. And I'm going to use the little launcher button, the dialog box launcher, to get to the headers and footers here. And I'm going to make a custom header. So I'll just put my initials on the left, and maybe in the center I'll put the date. And over on the right I'll just put my company. And say OK. And then at the custom footer, perhaps in the center, I'll simply put a page numbering. Just to say OK. And now if I say OK, to set that all in, and I go and take a look. Now certainly the sheet I was on, which was New York, is going to look like that because I was doing it to that sheet. But let's go to Philadelphia and let's see the preview. And notice it's landscape, and it has the headers and the footers that I set up, and hard to tell about the margins, but there's wider margins on the left and right. So whichever sheet that I go to at this point is going to have that look. All right, so I'll go to the consolidate, which is the last one, which has no data in it yet, but you can see the layout of it, and there it looks the same. So that's a big help in terms of formatting. And if I wanted to ungroup again, if I have sheets that are not part of the group and I click on one of those sheets, like the total, that will ungroup it. Or you can right-click and tell it to ungroup sheets. So that's some of the features for that. Another thing I'd like to point out is when you have several sheets that are laid out similarly, and maybe I need another city in here, maybe I have to add Chicago information. And what most people do is they insert a new sheet and then copy and paste some of the labels and headings and so forth and insert the data. And you can certainly do that, but it's more work than copying the sheet exactly, in other words, making a duplicate of it. And the easiest way I know of to make a duplicate of it is to point to the sheet with your regular mouse button and then hold down the control key. And notice when I hit the control key, you get a little plus in that little piece of paper. That means I'm copying it as opposed to moving it. If I just dragged it, I would be moving it. I can drag it to whatever place I want and release the mouse first and then the control key, which means it creates an exact duplicate. So I now have a New York with a number 2 next to it, since I can't have 2 sheets with the same name. So if I double click on that and then change it to Chicago, and then change the New York label within the sheet to Chicago, and then grab the data and delete that, I'm all set, because it copied not only the data, not only the names, the labels, and so forth, but it copied the column widths, it copied the row heights, it copied the printer setup. Notice if I go to print preview, it's going to print landscape the way I set those sheets to print. So you'll save yourself a lot of time if you do an exact duplicate of the sheet, if you copy the sheet rather than starting with a blank new sheet and copying various labels and data and so forth. So that's copying. Now, many of us are aware of autofill, and I certainly hope so. And I'm going to go to another sheet so that I can illustrate this. And so this sheet has some data, not a great deal of data, about 100 lines of data. And it's a little database, and it has an item here for gross pay. And I'm going to create a little formula that just says take the hours that the person works and multiply it by the hourly rate to give me the gross pay. Okay, obviously this is a very old sheet, and we certainly hope people are earning more than this these days. But you all probably are aware that if you point to the autofill handle, and so you get that skinny little black cross, and you can drag this down and copy the formula to all the appropriate cells. And that works, there's nothing wrong with it. However, if you have to drag it down for 100, 200, 300 cells, it's tedious, and if you start going too fast, very quickly you're down on, you're down in row 10,000. And so it's easy to go too far. If instead you put your cursor on the same autofill handle and do a double click, it pops it down just to where there's data next to it, which is always what we want. So that saves you a great deal of time. Okay, I can illustrate that someplace else. For instance, if I deleted the totals here on one of these sheets and just did a double click, you can see what it does. It takes it down to where there's data next to it. Now this had a different type of formula, so I'm going to put it over here. Okay, so the double click will help you in a lot of different circumstances. A few other things about autofill that some people don't know. If I were to type in today's date anywhere, and I were to just use autofill, it's going to sequence dates starting with today and giving me every day, which is sometimes very helpful. If, however, I'm creating a schedule that is a work schedule, and I don't want to see the weekend dates, I just want to see the 5 weekdays. If I use my right button to drag instead of my normal left button, when I release, I will get a pop-up menu, like the right button very often does, give us a menu of choices. And I can say, instead of just filling the days, which would be normal, or filling the series, I can say, give me weekdays. And now you can see that it goes from the 21st to the 24th. And it goes from the 28th to the 31st, so that it is just giving me the weekdays rather than all the days. So that's one nice shortcut there. Another one you can sometimes use to your advantage with a right drag on the autofill in dates is to say fill months or fill years. And because I started out with today's date, which is the 18th, it's giving me the 18th of each subsequent month. So sometimes that is helpful if you need to create a sequence with the 1st of every month or the 15th of every month, etc. So those are some of the autofills. We also, of course, as I'm sure you know, can type in a month and get a sequence of months, or a day of the week and get a sequence of days of the week. Sometimes you have a different sequence that you would like to have displayed when you autofill. And it's not a sequence that's alphabetical, so you can't use an alpha function for it, a sort function. And so I'm going to show you another way that you can create what's called a custom list. If I go to this sheet that just has some sequences of months here, and it has sequences of products, I'll use that as an example. So let's say I want to be able to sequence New York, Philadelphia, Boston, San Francisco, Dallas, because those are where my sales offices are. And I always want them in that order. I don't want them in alpha order for whatever reason. If I were to select those cities, because they are undoubtedly already on a sheet somewhere that I have, and if you don't select them prior, you can also type them in to this. We go to the File tab, and we go to Options, the Program Options. Within the Program Options, we're going to go to the Advanced Options. Now, if you're using a different version, there might be slightly different places where you have to go to get to this. But in all of the versions, you will have a choice at some point to go to Custom List. Okay, so here it's down in the general section of the Advanced Options, and I'm going to go to Edit Custom List. So you can see here the custom list that already exists for the days of the week and the months of the year, both the full name and the abbreviated name. And because I've already selected this area A5 to A9 that has my cities, it's already in here. If I hadn't selected it first, I could type the entries in here, or I could select them at this point. But now I'm going to just say import them, and there is my list. And when I say OK, and I'm still in my options, so I have to say OK to the options to save that. Now, if I go to another place here and I type in Boston, and I autofill from Boston, it's going to give me in the exact order: Boston, San Francisco, Dallas, and then it goes back to New York, Philadelphia, etc. So that list is in there. Now, I've put it in my Excel options, so it's in my Excel program no matter what file I'm in. It's not just for this file. And you can go in there and delete it, but it's there until you delete it. The same thing could be said of these products. Let's say I have a particular list of products that I want to have in a certain order. I can go now to File, Options, and then go to the Advanced Options. And I know it's towards the bottom of the Advanced Options. Here in this General section, I can go to Edit Custom List. And it already has the area that I've selected, which is A18 to A22. If I import it, there are my products imported there. I say OK, OK. And again, just to test this out, now I can go to another sheet. I can go to a whole different blank sheet. I can go to a different file. It doesn't matter. Of course, now I've forgotten the name of the product, so that doesn't help very much. So S2000 printer. OK. So I'm going to go to my blank sheet, and I'm going to type in the S2000 printer, and then I'm going to autofill, and I get all of the printers in the right order, or of course I could autofill across as well. So just to show you that it works, doesn't have to be in even the same file, certainly not in the same sheet. So that's what we call a custom list, and you can create that custom list anytime you want and delete it anytime you want. Here's something new not new to the program, but perhaps new to you, that I'd like to show you, and it has to do with maybe I'm doing some changing of data on one sheet, and I would like to see how it's affecting my overall information or totals or consolidated data on another sheet. So I'm going to go here to the New York sheet. And in the Formulas tab, I'm going to go to something called Watch Window. All right, and this creates a watch, which means that I can add whatever sheet and whatever cells I would like to watch while I'm doing something here. So I'm going to say Add a Watch. And it's right now on the New York sheet, wherever my cursor happened to be. But what I'm going to do here is go to the Consolidate sheet. I haven't put in the totals yet, but I will do that. Okay. And I'm going to pick the January totals. All right, and that's what I want to watch, so I'm going to add that. So this has a watch, but right now I didn't put the totals in yet, so let's go back there and do that. So I'm going to go to the Consolidate sheet, and what I'm going to do here is to bring in the data for all of these different products for these 3 months, and this is just creating a formula that goes through the sheets. So hopefully this is something that's familiar to you. If not, this would be helpful. So I'm going to use an AutoSum function. You can type it in or you can use the button. And then I'm going to say, I want to start in New York, and I'm going to click on that January, the first printer, because that's where I was. And then if I hold Shift, this is much like doing a grouping, and I go to Dallas. So I'm saying give me New York through Dallas on that B6 cell. And when I hit Enter, that's what I have. And there's the formula. Give me a sum of New York through Dallas on B6. And because that everything's laid out the same way, I can auto-fill them down, and I can auto-fill them across. And now I have all of my figures in here. And my watch window is giving me the values, as you can see, for these January, for the printers for January in each of those cases. So let's say I go back to New York, and you can see, and I change something. in here, and this 45,000 some odd, I changed that to 55,000. And when I enter that, did you see this number changed? That's the B7 from the totals from the consolidated. So as you change something, so here let's change this 32,000 to 50,000, and watch over here. As soon as I change that, it changed. I didn't see which one it changed. Okay, if I undo that, there, it changed this one, the B9 cell. And if I redo it, you can see it change to reflect the totals in the consolidation. So that's what it's doing. So here's the 134,000 here, and so forth. Here's the 98,000 here. So I can be on any one of these sheets making some adjustments, changes, whatever, and I can be watching at the same time what's happening on my summary sheet, my consolidation sheet. And if I wanted to add another watch, I could. I could say add a watch as well, and I want to, again, go to this consolidation, and maybe I want to see what the totals are on the bottom or whatever. I can add that. So it's going to add for me whatever I'm interested in. Obviously, if you have too many in there, it becomes too confusing, and you're defeating your purpose. But that can be very handy. If you want to delete any of these watches, you can simply select. You can use Shift to multiple select if you like, and you can simply delete the watch. So I'm going to go down here and delete the watch. And then you can close the watch window anytime you like. So that's sometimes helpful. You can watch things in the same sheet. If you have a huge sheet that has 10,000 rows to it and 47 columns, you might want to be watching something in a particular place on the sheet while you're making changes in another area. So that's another way to do it. Okay, certainly one of the things that we can do, and hopefully you may all be familiar with this, but sometimes people aren't, and that is if I have a sheet like this that has a data area that's rather large and I scroll down, well, now I can't see what the headings say. So one of the things I want to be able to do is freeze or make static this row 4 because that has my headings. So what you would do is click underneath that in row 5, and first I'm doing it in the very first column. And in my View tab, because it has to do with what I'm viewing, I'm just going to say Freeze Panes. And notice that the line now extends. And now as I scroll down, you can still see the data, so you know what you're doing. And even if you scroll down below the data, you have told it to freeze those first 4 rows, and that will remain frozen. Likewise, sometimes I have lots of columns, and the first column has my product name or ID number or name of the person or whatever, and I want to be able to see that first column while I'm scrolling over to other data. Even if I don't have enough data to fill the whole width of the screen, I may want to put the gross pay, in this case, right next to the name and not have to look across all these other columns going in between. So to make that easy, I'm going to turn off the freeze pane that I just did. All right, so now nothing's frozen. It's not frozen this way, and it's not frozen this way. And I'm going to, since I want the first and last name to show while I scroll over to the hourly rate and the gross pay, I'm going to put my cursor here right underneath the row that I want to freeze and always to the right of the column. It will always freeze what's to your left and what's above you. So if I now go back to Freeze Panes in the View tab and say Freeze Panes, you see how the line is going both ways now. And in addition to scrolling down and seeing the items, I can scroll across and line up the gross pay right next to the person that I'm interested in, and that makes it a lot easier for me to work with this, or perhaps it's the rate or whatever. So freezing them both ways. And in the new version, you can actually click into the part that's frozen. In some of the older versions, you couldn't do that. You had to unfreeze. So if you see something that you need to correct or add or whatever, you can still do that, and it remains frozen, which is kind of nice. Okay, let's talk about creating a drop-down list. Okay, and sometimes you would like to, I'm going to go into that totals sheet. Sometimes you would like to restrict people in entering data to only enter, let's say, the city name or the product name that you want them to. Because if you let people freely enter anything, then you have some people that are going to put in NY, and some people are going to put in New York, and some people are going to put it in a different way, uppercase, lowercase, whatever. And then it becomes hard to sort and to work with the data that way. So sometimes it's handy to create, and I'm just going to create a range somewhere, to create what we call a drop-down list. So if I go to do this, and I go to data, because it's kind of a database function, and it actually is a data validation function. So we're going into data validation again. And under the data validation, you're in whatever area you selected, and it could be a whole column or a whole row or whatever, you're going to say, what would I allow in that area? And in this case, instead of saying I allow only a number or I allow only a date, which you could, we're going to say I allow only a list. And then it wants to know, well, where is your list? So I'm just going to use these cities as an example of the list. And then if I wanted to, I could then go to create a message that's going to show up when someone clicks in that area. So I'm going to just title it city, and then I'm going to say select from listed cities only, let's just say. And then you can also say, well, what if somebody doesn't want to do that? What kind of error do you want them to see? And it could be stop, you can't do that. It could be a warning. It could be certain information. I'm going to leave this as a stop. So when I say OK, and my cursor is in anywhere in any of those cells, I will see the select from listed cities only. That was my text that I put in there with the title city. And when I drop down, I have those cities. Okay, and I can go to another one and I can create, pick from those cities. If I try and type another city that's not on my list and I enter it, it gives me this, this is a problem, big red X, retry, cancel, whatever, help, so I can cancel it. Now, anywhere else that I did not use as that range doesn't have that. So I can pick whatever range I wanted. Obviously, that was the end of the range, and then I don't have it, so I chose these areas. So that becomes very handy if you're having other people enter data into your files and you want the data to be restricted in certain ways. And as I mentioned before, if I go to this data validation and I'm in an area where I only want people to enter dates, for instance, I can say a date, and I can even say what the start date and what the end date. In other words, I only want to enter dates that are in 2010 or something. Or if I just say greater than or less than or whatever, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to, you must do that. Okay, because I have it set as between. Let's say I say greater than, and I say 10, 1, 10. All right, so if I am here and I enter 11, 5, 10, it's happy. If I enter, if I enter 10, 1, 09, not happy because I said 10, 1, 10. Okay, so cancel that. So that sort of thing. So you might have a situation where you want people to enter in the dates that something happened and you are restricting it in a certain way. Okay, let's say just a couple of more items that I'm going to mention, and this is called grand totals, and there is a function within Excel that automatically will give you grand totals. And here's what I mean. I have a small example of it. Here's some product groupings, and so we have item, item, and then a sum. And then we have another grouping, item, 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 and a sum. So these are what we might call subtotals. So you have a data, and a subtotal, data, data, and a subtotal. Now, if I want to get a grand total, and of course this could be a much larger list, if I want to get a grand total and I start creating formulas and go total the whole column, it would give me a duplicate information. But if I have it laid out in this way, where they are contiguous and I have items and then subtotals, items and then subtotals. If I simply use the auto sum function, it's going to automatically add up only the subtotals. So if you take a look at what it's doing in the formula bar, it's adding up row 18, which is the subtotal for scanners, row 15, the subtotal for printers, 11, the subtotal for copiers, and 7, the subtotal for the computers. So it will automatically only get you the subtotals as long as everything is laid out and there's a sum right above it that cues it to go and look and see if there are other sums. So that's quite useful, quite helpful function. Okay.
Bob Nana wants to know if that's a new feature.
That is not a new feature. That's been in Excel for quite some time. Okay, let me talk one last feature I want to tell you about, and that is called a consolidation. And I'm going to delete, I created these sums by doing a sum function, and that's a perfectly fine way to do that. But I'm going to delete all of these sums because I want to show you that you can also do it by using the function within the program that's called consolidate, which has been in the program for many versions now. And it has certain advantages to do it by consolidation. That's why I want to show it to you. So if I select the area, the range in which I would like to consolidate the data, so in other words, I'm going to bring in the totals from all of those other sheets, and I'm going to bring them into this one for my wonderful company. And I'm going to go to Data Consolidate. Okay, and the Data Consolidate says, okay, where are the references that you're bringing in information from? And I could click on Browse and close this box up, but instead I'm just going to go from each one and I'm going to select the data, not the totals obviously, but the data. So I'm giving it the New York information and I'm going to say add it to my references. And then I'm going to Philadelphia. I don't even have to reselect because they're all set up the same way. This is called Consolidate by Position. And I'm going to add it, and then I'm going to go to Boston, which is scrolled over somehow, and then add it. And Chicago I know is blank, so I'm going to go to San Francisco and then Dallas. I'm adding all of those different ones. Now, I have the option to tell it to use labels from the top and the left, but in my Consolidate sheet I already have the labels there, so I don't have to do that. But I do want to create the links to the source data because this is what the added value is in doing the Consolidate. If I say OK now, not only, I just have to make these a little wider, not only do I have all of the data like I had before, okay, but notice on the left side I have an extra little column here which is where my outlining feature is, and this is automatic. And because I said link to the external data, it's going to, if I click on the number 2, it's going to show me where each of these come from. So look at the title, the formula bar, and you'll see this is the data from Boston, this is from Dallas, this is from New York, this is from Philadelphia, etc. So for each one I can expand if I like to and see the detail on the same sheet where I'm seeing the totals. It's creating this for me. And anytime I want, I can collapse it by saying I only want to see one level of data, or I can say, well, I need the details for the color porta printer, and I can click on that and see the details for that, or collapse it. So that's another way of bringing in your totals as long as everything is set up in the same way, which gives you some added value if you would like to see the details at the same time.
All right, Ronnie, well, I know you have a lot more information to cover, but we're running out of time here. And what I want to do is open it up for, see if anyone had any questions. What you can do is you can type the questions in the bottom left-hand side for the chat session. And while the questions are being typed, I just want to first thank you. This is, I've learned, every time I do one of your classes, I learned something new. I just got to utilize them now.
Right. Use it or lose it, I always say.
So we have a question coming in.
I saw that.
Rada wants to know is if you can link worksheets in different files to perform the same function. So instead of different work groups, I guess different files.
To consolidate, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
It's just that when you're going in to pick you would be using the browse. You'd have to have them all open, and you'd be using that browse feature to say where is the data, where is the information, and highlight the information in each appropriate file. Yeah, so you can use it for different files.
And while we're getting more questions, we also want to get some suggestions from everybody. We put on these free training sessions on a monthly basis, and we're always looking for new ideas and suggestions.
Oh, that's not good. Sorry.
Ron would like to know, I have two separate files that I'd like to link, not worksheets in the same file. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. They don't have to be worksheets. They can be two completely separate files. And as long as they're open, you can link them.
Mm-hmm.
Eileen gave a nice comment. Thank you, Eileen.
Well, let us know what you would like to see in these monthly training sessions. Is Word something you'd like to see? And if so, what kind of features do you need to learn about? Outlook, or other Excel functions? Well, let us know.
Oh, we've got another question coming in. Okay, we're just waiting for the questions to show up. I see people typing.
Thanks for your comment, Elena.
I've never needed to use or set up a macro, but would like to learn.
Okay, we did do a session on macros some months back. There are two types of macros. One is called a record macro, which is relatively simple, and it basically is recording the steps that you do on the screen with your mouse. And the other type of macro, you would be writing it in Visual Basic, which is a whole other thing because that's a programming language. So record macros are relatively simple. If we have enough call for that, I would be happy to do a session on macros.
Can we review the recorded session? We are going to try to make this online. YouTube has a limitation on length, so we're going to see if we can get this up on YouTube and email it out to everybody.
Let me mention that something that I do for companies sometimes is run a 1-hour lunch and learn session, and it's the kind of thing where I do a demo. Demoing obviously on a large screen for the company's people, and typically the company brings in some sandwiches and whatever, and you can pick up a lot of information and ask some questions. It's not a very expensive way to get a lot of people introduced and learning some new things on whatever program they decide they want me to do it on.
Okay. Well, if there's not any other questions, there might be. Rada would like to see if you could just show her now or afterwards on how to do the linking up a separate file. I don't know if you have a separate file set up.
I don't know. I'd have to see if I have files with me that that would lend themselves to doing that. But I can. Let's see. If I have two files open, even though that doesn't really have to do with this. But if I was going to data consolidate, and here I'm in a separate file that I called consolidate, if I say go to this file and grab this information and add it, it allows me to do that. It just puts the path and the name of the file and the name of the sheet in there. And then if I had another file that I wanted to do it to, I could do the same thing. I could add. So if they're not laid out the same way, if I don't have an example that's set up that way, it's not going to work very well. But yes, you can see that it's easy enough to do that.
Okay, well that looks like it's That's all we have. Thank you very much. Live from the U.S. Computer Connection headquarters, we're going to be logging off, and we'll try to get this training session available for everybody so you could review it. Keep your eyes out for more training classes coming next month, and we'll send it an email. And thanks again for sharing your time with us.
Okay, thank you for your attention.